Welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the RESP, or the Registered Education Savings Plan. This can be one of the most important accounts you can open if you have children, mostly because the government grants are so substantial. Like the name says, this is going to be a registered account that can be used to save money for your child's post-secondary education. I just went to this website here, mommyconnections.ca, and they have sort of the outlook as to how much a 4-year program will cost with residency and without residency. So if you can stay at home and make the trek to the post-secondary institute, it will save you a ton of money. You can see here that any child going to post-secondary in 2024 is expected to spend about $92,000 over the 4-year program. And if they are able to stay at home or stay with a relative, then that gets cut down to about $49,000. Here, my boys are born in 2010 and 2012. You can see that it's going to be over $100,000 as an estimate over their 4-year education if they require any housing. So any help that you can get from the government will be much appreciated, I'm sure. All you need to do to open this account is have a social insurance number for the child. I know that when our children were born, we were able to apply for their social insurance number right there at the hospital. They had the forms there. It was quick and convenient for us to do that right there. I want to note that at some of the bigger hospitals that there will be group RESP providers at the hospitals just waiting for you. It is important that you do not go with one of these providers. I've heard some horror stories from these companies. I will have a separate video on these companies and why not to go with them. They do use some predatory practices. They'll try to guilt you into going with them. I've heard some people say that they've said that they don't care about their education, their child's education, if they don't go with one of these plans, or they think their kids won't make it to post-secondary. They'll just use any tactic they can to get you to try to sign with one of these group RESP companies. So again, I'll have a separate video dealing with the group RESPs. When you do open an RESP, you'll be asked to open one of two kinds of accounts, an individual RESP or a family RESP. Basically, a family RESP is a basket that can be used for any number of children. So if you have 2 or 3 kids, you can open a family RESP, and when those children all go to post-secondary, they have access to all of those funds in that basket. An individual RESP is meant for just one child, so if you had 2 or 3 children, you can still open up an individual RESP. The only advantage I can see to opening an individual RESP is that if you wanted to have the exact same amount of money for each of the kids for the post-secondary, then the individual RESP would come in handy, and you can put in the same amount for each child. We just happen to open a family RESP. You never know. What if one child does a 2-year trades program and one goes on to get his doctorate? We just wanted each of them to have access to whatever they needed for their post-secondary. I do want to note again that the family RESP and the group RESP are very different. I know that when I start having this conversation with some people, they get confused by the two. Do not get the group RESP, but the family RESP is a great account. Let's talk about why the RESP is such a great account. And it comes down to this CESG, the Canada Education Savings Grant. For every dollar you put in, the government will put in 20 cents. So that's a 20% return right off the bat. And what happens is, let's say you put in $100, a few months later, $20 just gets put into your RESP account, and you can invest it however you see fit. If you put in $1,000, a few months later, the government will put $200 into your account. This is an extremely large percentage. You won't get that kind of return anywhere else, really. So it is nice to take advantage of that. Now, being a registered account, there are limits to this. The annual limit to the grant is $500. So that means you can put up to $2,500 into the account, and the government will give you $500 per year. Again, this is huge, 20% back. You're not going to get that anywhere else. Take advantage of it if you can. Another restriction to this is that there is a lifetime maximum for the grant, and that lifetime max is $7,200. So that means up to $36,000 of your investments can get the 20% back, up to a max of $7,200. So how that works is if you were able to max it out every year, so let's say you put in $2,500 every year to get the maximum annual contribution limit of $500, you can do that for about 14.4 years in a row. Keep putting the $2,500 in until you've put in $36,000, and that maxes out your grant level at $7,200 over the lifetime. So sometime in their 13th birthday before they're 14, if you were able to max it each year, you would max out the government grants. There is a lifetime max contribution limit, though, of $50,000. So you can actually put up to $50,000 into it, not just the $36,000. The extra $14,000 just won't get you any grant money if you happen to try to max it out each time. Some people will argue that it is actually more beneficial to put in a lump sum of $50,000 into the RESP, not worry about the grant. You would get the one-time grant of the $500, but you wouldn't get any more grants. You can see here that when the child turns 18, there's $169,000 in the account, which is fantastic, used for education. And I did run the spreadsheet, I won't have it here, but if you were to do the other method where you just max out the CESG, so you put in the $2,500 per year, getting that $500 back every year until you've maxed out the $7,200 CESG, and then just let it grow until the child is 18, then it grows to about $94,000. So there's about a $75,000 difference in that, and absolutely, the numbers show that if you put the lump sum in there, you will have more for your child's education. But realistically, how many people actually have a $50,000 lump sum to put into the account? I think that's probably a select few people. Most people actually can't even max out the $2,500 contribution limit to get the CESG, and that is entirely okay as well. My suggestion is just put in whatever you can into the account. Maybe it's $50 a month, maybe it's $100 per month. I know when my wife stayed home for years with the boys when they were little, we just used whatever we got from the CCB, the Canada Child Benefit Plan. And so whenever that money came in, we just put it into the RESPs. Whenever grandparents gave some money, birthday money, something like that, we'd take a portion of that and put it into the RESPs. Grandparents can be a huge help to this account. Ask them if they're willing to put in a little bit of money, maybe half of it, maybe $1,000 per year. Anything helps because you're getting that 20% back. If you are considered lower income in Canada, there are additional CESG grants here. You can see you can earn up to an extra $100 or $50 depending on where your family income lands. But in the end, the overall maximum lifetime of the CESG will be $7,200. If you do reside in BC or Quebec, there are additional grants. In BC, there's a one-time $1,200 grant for a child that turns 6 years old, so make sure you apply for that. And if you're a resident of Quebec, they have an additional 10% on top. So all the same rules apply as the CESG, but it's basically just cut in half. So the extra 10% from Quebec and the 20% from the federal government gives you a total return of an extra 30% on every dollar that you put into the RESP. And if you are considered, again, lower income, there's the Canada Learning Bond as well, which can give you an additional $2,000 lifetime for this grant. So you can see there's lots of different funds coming in here from the government, and it makes this account really worthwhile to open. If you're unable to max out the grant in a given year, that's okay. There's catch-up room. It's not as nice as the TFSA or the RRSP where all of your unused contribution room gets carried forward. They have a maximum of 1 year grant carry forward. So that means your maximum grant could be, if you haven't maxed out the year before, up to $1,000. So you can put up to $5,000 into the account to earn $1,000. You can put in more than the $5,000 again, you just won't get the CESG. Now, how do you withdraw and use this money? You need to contact your provider. So we have our RESP currently with Questrade. So we would contact Questrade and we would have to provide them with a proof of enrollment at one of the authorized universities or post-secondary institutions. Once we've done that, the RESP is actually broken up into two pieces. You have your PSE, your post-secondary education payment, which is your contributions, what you put into it. And you have your EAP, the Educational Assistant Program, which is your government grants and the growth of the account. So those are the two pieces of the RESP. The PSE, the contribution part, will have no tax consequences on it. It was already taxed from your income, your parents' income, or wherever the money came from. And there is no limit to how much you can withdraw from the PSE. So if you max it out at the $36,000 or the $50,000, you can actually take out that $36,000 or $50,000 right out of the account as soon as you've been approved. No tax consequences at all, no limits at all. The EAP is very different. Your government grants and your growth have not been taxed. So that will be taxed, but it will be taxed in the child's tax bracket, which is beneficial because generally that student is in a low income bracket and there's lots of tax credits that can be used to lower the income. There's limits to withdrawal at the beginning. So you can actually only pull out $8,000 from the EAP for the first 13 weeks that this child has enrolled. This used to be $5,000, but in 2024, they've upped that to $8,000. And then after the 13 weeks, there aren't any limits. You could pull out as much money as you want from the EAP as well. Just be mindful that it will be counted as income in the child's hands. So ideally what you want to do is you want to break up the EAP into smaller chunks so that they get taxed in a lower tax bracket throughout the withdrawals of this. But you do want to, by the time they finish their post-secondary, empty out the RESP. So what happens if you do not use up the RESP, or if your child doesn't even go to a post-secondary institute? There are a couple of options that you have. First, it should be noted that the account can be open for 36 years. So don't jump the gun and withdraw whatever you can. Just keep it open and wait that 36 years to make sure that your child does not go back to school at some point in their life. But the first option is, if it is a family RESP, then another child can just use the money. It doesn't have to be used by that one child. If it is an individual account, then your option is that you could transfer it to another child's RESP. If you do this, the other child does need RESP contribution room and you have to give back all the government grants. Option 2 is to put it into your RRSP. So you could actually transfer your RESP into your RRSP. Again, you need RRSP room or spousal RRSP room, and you have to give back the grants. And option 3 is you cash it out. So let's say you don't have any RRSP room and you need to take that money out, then you have to cash it out, and you can take out the PSE with no tax consequences, but the government grants have to be returned. The growth will be taxed at your tax bracket, not the child's tax bracket, and there's going to be an additional 20% penalty on top of that. So this is your last option. It's not a good option, but sometimes it is what it is. And how should you invest in the RESP? Well, there is an 18-year time period there, so that is fairly long. So most financial advisors will tell you to take lots of risk at the beginning of the account. I know my wife and I, we decided to go 100% equity. This is rarely the recommendation for anyone. What you could start with an 80-20 portfolio or 75-25 portfolio. Put a little bit of safe stuff in there. It is your child's education. And as the child gets older, so say between 10 and 13 years old, you might want to reduce the risk factor and maybe make a 60-40 balanced portfolio or something like that. And as the child gets to 16, 17 years old and really close to using that account, then you want to probably pick something with very, very low risk. Put it into a GIC, put it into a high interest savings ETF or something like that. This is all very personal, and you'll have to decide what risk factors you want to take with your child's education money. I hope this video has shown you some of the benefits of the RESP and why you should open one if you do have children. And if you've enjoyed this video and would like to stay informed of some of my other ones, please subscribe below. Have a wonderful day.